Welcome to the part 2 of the series on revenue operations. We're going to talk about revenue architecture. The last session, I talked about why revenue operations matter. This week, let's talk about what it actually is. Because most people, they get this wrong. And getting the definition wrong, it leads to getting the implementation wrong. Many execs, they think RevOps is just a rebranded sales operations team. I've observed this misconception. It costs companies dearly. They hire a VP of RevOps, they stick them under the CRO, and give them the sales ops teams, maybe add a systems admin, and wonder why nothing changed. That's because they missed the fundamental point. Revenue operations is your revenue architecture. It is the systems, processes, and insights that are layered that sits across your entire customer journey. Marketing, sales, customer success, and yes, even finance. It's not owned by sales, it's not owned by marketing, it works for the business. It's a horizontal function that enables all the vertical go-to-market functions to work together as a coordinated revenue engine. Let me give you a personal example that illustrates why the reporting structure matters so much. I worked with a company where they created a RevOps function and had it report to the CRO. It made sense on the surface. Revenue operations, chief revenue officer, seems logical. Within 6 months, here's what happened. The RevOps team, they spent 80% of their time on sales requests, building dashboards for individual sales leaders, cleaning up deal data for quarter end, optimizing sales compensation plan, basically becoming exec assistants to the sales organization. Meanwhile, marketing was still operating in a silo with their own operations person, and customer success was begging for help with their systems, but could not get on the roadmap. And finance was pulling all-nighters at quarter end, trying to reconcile these pipeline to bookings to revenue, because no one owned that end-to-end view. So the company was not getting any closer or getting any of the cross-functional value that revenue operations is supposed to deliver. So we restructured it. We moved RevOps to report to the CFO. We gave it clear authority across all revenue functions, and the change was dramatic. Within 2 quarters, they had implemented lead scoring that both marketing and sales trusted. It was not marketing's version or sales version, but one system. They created SLA agreements between teams that actually stuck because RevOps had the authority to hold everyone accountable. The forecast accuracy, by the way, it improved by 23 percentage points because one team owned the forecast model and the data integrity behind it. So let's talk about the architecture itself. I think of revenue operations as having 3 foundational pillars, and you need all 3 working together hand in hand to have a functioning system. The first pillar is around systems and technology. This is your tech stack integration and your data integrity integration. And when I say integration, I don't just mean the tools are technically connected through all these APIs. I mean data flows cleanly and consistently, field mappings are standardized, and there's governance around who can change what, and you have visibility into the data quality. I've observed companies with incredibly sophisticated technology, Salesforce, Marketo, Gainsight, Tableau, the whole 9 yards, or rather the whole expensive stack. But it's all held together with duct tape and prayers. Fields are mapped inconsistently, data flowing one way but not the other, different teams using the same field for different purposes, and critical information living in these spreadsheets are not to be trusted because they are being gathered from different sources that do not have data integrity. So a system pillar of revenue operations means someone owns the entire tech stack, the entire architecture, the entire integrations work, and they monitor the data quality and has the authority to say, no, we are not adding another tool that does not integrate with your core systems. This might sound basic, but I've seen companies with literally 40 or 50 marketing and sales tools that nobody can explain why they have or whether they will ever be actually used. Second pillar, I'd look at the process and enablement. This is standardizing how revenue gets generated from lead definitions to deal stages to renewal workflows. One company, one process, one playbook, and this critically, this pillar includes enablement, making sure people know how to follow the process and have the skills and tools to execute it. Here's what I've observed happens without this. Every region develops their own process. Every sales manager has their own method. Every rep has their own version of the sales tech. Marketing runs campaigns that sales doesn't know about. Sales makes promises that customer success cannot deliver on. It is chaos that you can get away with when you're small, but that becomes very catastrophic when you start scaling, when you become large. The process pillar means defining and documenting your revenue motions, ensuring that they are followed consistently and continuously improving them based on data. It means establishing service level agreements between teams. It means that the marketing makes commits to delivering X number of qualified leads with Y characteristics, and the sales commits to following up within an X amount of time frame. Customer success is committing at this point to complete onboarding within Y days. And someone is measuring whether these commitments are being kept. I worked with a company that had no defined process for transitioning customers from sales to customer success. Sales would close a deal, they would celebrate and basically throw it over the wall. And sometimes a customer success manager found out they had a new customer when the customer reached out asking for help. Sometimes sales had made commitments during the sales cycle that were never documented anywhere. And what was the result? 30% of new customers had a negative first impression during onboarding, which directly impacted the renewal rates a year later. RevOps comes in at this point. They came in, they defined a formal handoff process, they defined the required documentation, they implemented a transition call between sales and customer success, and that happened within 48 hours of closing, and they created an accountability metrics framework. Customer satisfaction scores during onboarding jumped by 40 points. The first-year renewal rates improved by 12 percentage points. And that is the value of the process pillar. The third pillar is around analytics and insights. This is turning all that clean integrated data into forecasts and metrics you can actually trust when you're making board-level decisions. This is where RevOps shifts from being an operational function to becoming a strategic function. I've observed that most companies have plenty of data. They're drowning in data. Every tool produces reports and reports and reports. Every team has multiple dashboards. But they don't have the insights. They don't have a unified view of what is working and what is not. They don't have reliable leading indicators that predict future performance. They can tell you what happened last quarter, but they cannot tell you with a high level of confidence what might happen next quarter. The analytics pillar of RevOps mean building the reporting infrastructure that gives the leadership the visibility they need. This includes a forecast model, and that is obvious, but it is much more broader than that. There's cohort analysis showing how customer behavior is evolving. There are conversion metrics across the entire funnel identifying where deals are getting stuck. There's capacity planning models that tell you whether you have enough pipeline to hit your targets. It is ROI analysis on marketing spend and sales analysis, sales investment. Here's an example. I worked with a company that were debating whether to expand into a new market segment. And the sales leadership, they were very enthusiastic. They were like, yeah. They closed a few deals there and thought there was a huge potential. But marketing was a little bit hesitant. The cost per lead was higher than their core segment. And finance wanted data before committing to a budget. So they argued about it for months. And finally, RevOps, they step in and they ended the debate. And they did the analysis properly. They looked at the complete economics. Yeah, CAC was 40% higher in the new segment, that's true. And the sales cycle was 30% shorter, that's good. And average deal size was 60% larger, better. And based on early data, retention looked stronger. So the payback period was actually better than the core segment. The company expanded into the segment and it became 20 to 22% of their revenue within 18 months. But without the revenue ops pulling together the complete picture, they might have never made that decision, or worse, made it based on incomplete information. Now, these three pillars, systems, process, and analytics, they have to work together. You can't just pick one. I've seen companies try to build RevOps by only focusing on technology, thinking if they just implement the right tools, everything will work. It doesn't work. The tools are only as good as the processes that the people follow and the quality of the data going into them. I've seen companies focus only on process, creating elaborate playbooks and workflows, but without the systems integrating to support it and the analytics to measure whether it's working. That doesn't work either. Process without technology support becomes bureaucratic overhead that people route around. I've definitely seen companies try to build analytics on top of the broken data and the inconsistent processes. And what do you get? What do you get? You get beautiful dashboards, which shows garbage. Decisions made based on those dashboards are worse than decisions made on gut feel. But when you build revenue operations correctly, you're not adding bureaucracy, you're building the nervous system that lets your revenue engine actually function as one organism instead of 3 or 4 separate creatures fighting for resources and arguing about whose fault it is when targets get missed. And this is what separates companies that scale efficiently from companies that just get bigger and messier. The efficient scalers build this infrastructure intentionally. The messy growers try to retrofit later at tremendous costs. So next week, we'll talk about the revenue leaks you cannot see, the hidden costs and the inefficiencies that only become visible when you have proper revenue operations in place. And these are the silent killers of revenue growth and profitability. It'll be an interesting session, so I look forward to seeing you in part 3 of this series. Take care. Bye-bye.